Okay, karibu sana. I want to take you through the camera. That's the topic for today. Though I've actually been having some issues with the internet. Let me hope that we'll be able to get to be together all the way to the end. And if there will be some issues at the middle of the lesson, my request will be that if you're not getting me, you can actually connect with me through the chat. That's the public chat on this particular Moodle, so that I can be able to see when I'm not getting to direct to you, so that we can be able to move together. Sasa Waidaka na Vincent.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, now the last time when we had some discussions before we did our cut, we are basically looking into what is this that we are defining as photography, and we also moved on and had a discussion about photojournalism, in the sense that we wanted to be able to understand when we talk about photography and when we talk about journalism, how do we make use of the two together so that we can be able to achieve the effect or the results of telling stories visually. And we had that particular opportunity to be able to understand now what is this that we're defining as photojournalism. Now, today, for you to be able to practice as a photojournalist, we need to be able to understand that you need to be good at how you make use of the camera. And that's why we want to have a discussion about camera and its operations and the various parts that we have with the camera. And sometimes we need to be able to understand also on the support equipment that we need to be able to have so that we can be able to make use of the camera appropriately. Now, one thing or one particular myth that I want to put away from you and from another person is that it's not the camera that determines how you tell your stories. The person behind the camera is actually the person who determines how that particular story is going to be told. So whether you have a camera on your phone, you have a professional camera, or you have just a point and shoot camera, it does not negate the point that it's you who can be able to determine how you're going to tell the story. What it means, therefore, is the person behind that particular camera is actually the person who will determine how the story is going to be. Now, for us to be able to understand what it means for you to be able to tell good stories, we need to understand few basic things. Now, a camera is basically a machine, just like your phone. And cameras come basically in different shapes and sizes, depending on one, the manufacturer, two, the features that that particular camera has and how it can be able to operate, and three, the reasons to which you buy that particular camera. So some particular cameras will be so small, miniature cameras, like those ones that are used in CCTV security purposes, and those huge cameras that are actually used in TV and film studios. So a camera is basically a machine, but it being a machine, like we talked about photography or photography being a science and an art, we need to be able to understand that that particular science part of it, of the camera being a machine, you need to be able to find a way that you can be able to inculcate or you can be able to introduce the art part of it so that you can be able to make use of that particular camera so that it can be able to give you good news photos that you can be able to use so that you can be able to tell the stories. Now, when we talk about these particular cameras, there are different types of cameras. Like I've told you, based on one, the manufacturer. For example, we can talk about Panasonic cameras. We can talk about Canon cameras. We can talk about Kodak cameras. We can talk about Nikon cameras. These are different types of cameras based on the manufacturer. And two, we have different types of cameras based on the what is it that they can be able to do. For example, we have the SLR cameras, that's the single lens cameras. We also have the, 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 the DSLR cameras, and these are based on the kind of capabilities that they have. What are they capable of doing in terms of how they are manufactured? So you will be able to realize that we have different types of cameras, like we have said, based on how they are manufactured, as in what is it that they are capable of doing. And two, we have different types of cameras based on the manufacturers. And different manufacturers, they are in business, they are in competition, so that they can be able to produce what is going to take charge of the photography field. So manufacturers will always try to compete and come up with various features depending on what they do research on and what they realize that their consumers want. For example, when you talk about the various types of not cameras, but phones that we have, you'll realize that we have a Samsung phone, we have a Techno phone, we have a Nokia phone. All these are types of phones. They basically and generally do similar things. That's writing texts, um, calling, and allowing you to go to the internet. But as they allow you to be able to do search, you'll get to realize that Samsung comes up with particular features. For example, it can allow you to be able to look into that particular phone and it will be able to open. Um, Techno can come up with where you're supposed to place your finger on a particular part of that particular phone and it will be able to open. So those particular features are what makes uh, differences in terms of how those particular phones work. The same thing happens normally when we talk about cameras. So the the the, the, the manufacturers always are up and running so they can be able to introduce particular features that will make the work of the photographer much easier and much better. But now, I was talking about the various types and the various differences that are there in terms of cameras. There are particular three things that we need to be able to understand. And you understanding those three things will make your photography work superb and of quality and that which will be admired either by the consumers or by the news media houses that you will be working for or those that you aspire to work for. And these particular features, whether you're talking about the SLR cameras or the DSLR cameras, are one, you talk about the shutter speed. What does your camera allow you to do in terms of the shutter speed? Number two, what does your camera allow you to do with the aperture? And the three, what does your camera allow you to do with ISO? So these three, shutter speed, aperture, and ISO or ISO, are the three key things that you need to be able to look into when you do want to do shopping for a camera. Now, shutter speed is basically how quick or how slow is the camera capable of opening and closing its its iris, because that particular opening which allows light to go through the camera into the the, 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 the light sensor will determine how sharp your images will be or how blurred will they be. So if images are going to be sharper, more especially when we're talking about the moving images, you need to be able to have a camera that can be able to give you actually a higher shutter speed. So that particular higher shutter speed is what you need to be able to look into, more especially for those of us who would want to do documentary photography, for those of us who would want to do sports photography, you need a camera that can give you the highest possible shutter speed so that you can be able to do proper videos or proper photos that can allow you to be able to get sharper images that can communicate a particular message. Number two, when we talk about aperture, aperture is basically um, the opening, that particular opening, like the camera basically gets light from outside, the reflected light from a subject that goes through the aperture, then finally gets into the light sensor. So, how wide can that aperture open, or how close can that particular aperture open? So, you need to be able to look into that. If you are doing night photography, you need a camera that can open as wide as much as it can so that the small amount of light that is available can be able to go through that particular aperture and be sensed in the sensor, because that particular sensor is what records what the camera sees. So if you're doing night photography, make sure that you get a camera that has a wide opening, actually a large aperture. If you're doing probably beach photography, you're shooting photos along the beaches where there's a lot of light, because the water in the sand dunes, they have a way that they reflect back that particular light, and there's going to be a lot of light. You need that particular aperture that can be able to close so much and be able to allow a small amount of light so that it can be able to be recorded there. And when that happens, then again, you need to be able to understand that aperture controls. If you're taking photos of moving images, or I mean of moving subjects, your aperture has to work hand in hand with the shutter speed, so that at the end of the day you can either have shallow images or sharp images. Number three, we have talked about the ISO. ISO is the fake light that goes through to the sensor. So sometimes you might realize that you'll be taking photos during in a dim area, probably indoors. And in that particular area, what is going to happen is you need to be able to find a way that you can trick your camera using the ISO so that at the end of the day, it can allow you to be able to record brighter images, so that at the end of the day, they can be able to give you a better and a quality image, so that at the end of the day, if the area is very dim, that that particular area that is very dim, or that particular environment, you need to be able to increase the ISO, probably from 200 to 300 or to 400, so that at the end of the day, it can be able to give you the very best in terms of um, visuals. If ISO is not going to work for you, then you realize it's going to be very slow. And once you have understood now the three main areas of any particular camera, that's the shutter speed, the aperture, and ISO or ISO, you are now at a position to be able to know how can you operate your camera. Because these other basics, like how to put it on, how to close it, those are things that you can be able to achieve at any particular in time when you know exactly how you can be able to use your camera. For example, when you get to the shop and buy a phone, there are those common things. One, how to switch it off and on. Once you know that one, then number two, the thing that you know is how can you make a call and how can you do a text. These other things, as you make use of that particular phone, you'll be able to learn them. And the same thing happens when it comes to the cameras, the various parts that you have there. How can you be able to operate them? What are they for? And how can they be able to work for you? it's actually something that you can be able to learn, and you can be able to learn this out of the notes that I'm going to share with you. But as we get to look into the notes that I'll be able to share with you, let me give you three main areas. That's one, we have what we call the body, and two, we have the optical parts. Now, the camera is actually out of the optical parts. Now, the optical parts is from that particular point where the camera's sensor is deep inside that particular camera. I'll be able to share with you the notes, and not really the notes, but the drawing of the camera so that you can be able to see. From the sensor all the way to the lens, it's the optical part of the camera. Then these other parts are actually the body. The body is now what carries the battery, it's what carries the even the optical part of it. It's the huge part that we normally see. It's what carries that particular board where you can be able to change the where you have the operations if you want to operate your camera manually. And for your information, the camera person needs to have his camera on manual. There is no way you can be able to be a good photographer if your camera is basically on auto. Auto is left for amateurs, manual is for the professionals. So allow your camera to be able to operate on manual at all times, because what that means is if you allow your camera to be on auto, it's the camera that will be able to tell you what it wants. Ni kama uko na mtoto mdogo, mtoto akifika asubuhi anakwambia leo mami ama dadi, I don't feel like taking tea, mi nataka kula ugali. Na ni asubuhi, ukipika ugali anakwambia hapana, ulichelewa kupika huo ugali, mimi sasa nataka chai. Ukirudi kupika chai anakwambia sasa mimi sitaki chai, na sitaki ule ugali ulikuwa umepika. Nikiitisha wewe unachelewa sana. Sasa nataka kula nataka kula chips. Ukienda shambani labda ulete viazi, atengeze hizo viazi so that umtengezee chips, anakwambia hapana, sasa nataka kunyonya. That's how the camera will be able to dictate you if you allow the camera to be on auto. But if you allow the camera to be on manual, it's you to tell the camera exactly what you want. For example, you might make a decision you'd want to do indoor photography. Na pale ndani, you get to realize that it's going to be dim. And you get to realize that artistically, you wanted that particular image to be dim like that. If you allow the camera to be on auto, itaongeza ISO. It affect a lot of light so that that particular image can be so bright. That is not what you wanted, but the camera has made a decision to be able to give you that. Look into another scenario. You might be doing outdoor photography. In outdoor photography, you make a decision now you want to take a photo of a flower, and on that particular flower there is a bird that's actually trying to pick nectar from that particular flower. Then the background, you want that particular background to be blurred. If you allow your camera to be on auto, the camera will ensure that everything from the flower and the bird that is on actually on that particular flower and the things that are actually on the background are all of them going to be on focus. That is deep focus for all what we'll be able to see. But if you allow the camera to be on manual, you'll make decisions in terms of the aperture. You'll allow that particular aperture to be large. Then you'll allow the shutter speed to be slow. And when you take that particular photo, then what we're going to have is actually a sharper image of the bird and the flower, then a shallow background that is going to be what you actually intended to be able to to have from the beginning. So these are things that you need to be able to look into. Determine how the camera is going to work for you. Don't allow the camera to determine what it will be able to give you. So that's what you need to be able to look into. So now when you talk about the camera body, it's basically that box that holds the camera controls, and where you place the memory card, or if you're using the memory card, where you place the film, or for those of us who will use the film, because you remember some cameras actually allow us to make use of the films. You remember those of us who had the opportunity to be able to see those huge cameras that were used there before. Those are the ones that um, we make use of films, and they were very good in that. Now technology is actually trying to find a way to phase them out. Though, from my own thinking, I would want to tell you that they might not be phased out. The body also houses the battery. It's where we can be able to hold or connect the flash, and that's the flashlight and the other controls for that particular camera. That's where you can be able to have. Then the opticals now, one lens. The lens is basically an attachment for the camera that focuses light into the body onto that particular film or the light sensor. Because if you're using a digital single reflex camera, you'll get to realize that we'll be using the light sensor. We ain't going to be using the film. So what what directs light onto that is basically what we have as the camera. And this is basically going to allow you also to be able to do some other things. One, it can allow you to be able to zoom in and out. For example, if you are using a telephoto lens, you can be able to take images of objects. But how are you capable of doing that? It's because you using that telephoto lens, you can be able to zoom in and take those particular photos. If you're going to be so close to a particular subject and you want to take it away, again, you need to be able to find a lens that can allow you to be able to do that. The optical part of the camera again holds or encompasses the viewfinder. The viewfinder is that particular hole at the back of the camera that you look through to 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 to, to see what that particular image that you're going to take. How does it look and how is it positioned? You if you talk about now composing that particular um, image, how are you going to compose it? What are you going to allow to be inside that particular image, and what are you going to not to allow? So that particular viewfinder sometimes nowadays, because of technology, you normally find that we have an LCD screen. That particular LCD screen enables you to be able to do things that you would have done with the viewfinder. And sometimes I advise people, when you're going to buy a camera that has the LCD screen and two, the viewfinder. The LCD screen, if you're doing outdoor photography, it might not be able to give you a clear picture of what you will be able to take off, because light that is falling on that particular LCD screen might not really allow you to see properly. And number two, the LCD consumes a lot of power. So if you find that you're going to do photography outside where you might not be able to have electricity or the means for charging, then the best thing that you can be able to revert to is actually to revert to a viewfinder and leave now this particular LCD screen alone, because it will consume a lot of power. And they need now to be able to 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 see that. So those are the main areas. Again, you can't forget that we have the camera controls. The camera controls is that particular cupboard where you can be able to press if you want weight balancing. Uh, you control that particular weight balancing from there. If you want auto or manual, if you want um, camera, your camera to be able to time for you so that you can be able to take a photo after a given period of time. That's part of the camera too. So you need to be able to understand those particular parts. You need to be able to understand what they able to do. And I'm going to share with you a particular video that actually that is done by another Indian who tries to take you through uh, every stage in terms of operating that particular camera, what you have in the camera, because cameras come always in different sizes and in different complications. A Samsung phone is quite different from an iPhone. Not because you cannot be able to operate, but because you need to be able to have time so that you can be able to know how to operate it. Now, after us looking into the camera and the various parts of that particular camera, now I need you to be able to understand that a camera needs a lot of times and many times to be supported. What it means, therefore, is you might be very good in terms of you holding the camera. You can hold that particular camera and shoot, but some of us are not capable of doing that. Why? Because we shake a lot. Or sometimes in particular places, we might get tired for standing for a long period of time. So we need something that can be able to support that particular camera. And number three, we also need to understand that for us to be able to have um, proper images, we need to be able to have the camera at a standstill. And for us to be able to do so, then we need those camera support equipments. And these camera support equipments come in different sizes, in different way. I mean, not really ways, but in different designs, so that they can be able to allow you to uh, fix that particular camera on it. And once you have fixed that particular camera on it, then you can be able to operate the camera. For example, we have what you call and commonly known as a tripod stand. A tripod stand is basically um, like the word tripod, a pod that has three legs that can allow you to position them on the ground. Um, and once you've positioned them on the ground and fixed the camera on it, then the camera will be on a standstill so that you can be able to operate it there effectively and properly. Sometimes tripods can be small, and some other times they can be so huge, depending on where you're using the camera. If you're going to do outside photography, you need a simple tripod stand that can be able to help you operate your camera and move with it at any given point in time. Because if you're using a tripod stand like those ones that we actually use in studio, you'll get to realize that those ones that are in a studio, sometimes they can be so huge and large, and they can be so heavy. Look into a scenario where you are carrying a tripod stand that weighs about 15 kgs, and you're moving from one point to the other, a distance of about 15 kilometers to be able to shoot a particular project. That will be a lot of weight that you might not need for that point in time. So tripods are of different sizes and different designs, but basically they achieve one and the same thing. And some are actually a bit complicated because those particular tripods are designed in a way that their hands or their handles can enable you to operate the camera if the camera is going to be so high uh, from from you, as in depending on how you're going to position them and what are you going to shoot. So they all come in different designs and different sizes. Then number two, we have what we call the monopods. Monopods now, like a tripod, is actually like not real memory stick, but this selfie stick. It's just like that. It holds the camera, and you can be able to point it at to one particular direction, take photos of that particular uh, subject that you're taking, and that's it. Then we also have what we call the the the, the crane. The crane, for those of us who have who would want to do geography, you'll get to realize that sometimes we require aerial shots, shots that are taken from above the subject. The person that can be able to help you do that is actually the crane. And those of us who have happened to go to sports, I mean, not really sports, yeah, mostly to sports area, sports fields or to the stadia, you'll get to realize that these huge media houses come with their cranes, and they use those particular cranes to be able to share, to take photos or to record videos using them. Where you see it's operated by um, a tractor or a particular huge car, and on the further end, on that particular hand, you get to see that the photographer will be seated there with the camera, and he or she will be taking those particular photos. Apart from the crane, we have again what we call the Steadicam. Now, a Steadicam is a machine. Let me use the term a machine that has been developed to be able to work against the force of gravity. How does that work? Now, what normally happens is the moment you fix your camera on the Steadicam and you add on or you put on that Steadicam, because a Steadicam is like a jacket with an appended or an extended uh, machine where you fix the camera. Now, what it will do is basically to allow you to move from one particular point to the other. But now, when you're fixed the camera on that particular Steadicam, the camera will not be moving because how that particular Steadicam has been designed, it cannot allow movement of the camera to to movement of the camera up and down probably as you run from one particular point to the other, and where the camera will be positioned is actually where it will be until you make a decision to be able to change it to a different. So a Steadicam is also another support equipment that you need to be able to have. Number the next support equipment that you have or you make use of when you are handling your camera is what we call the trolley. Now the trolley is something that you can be able to move forward, backwards, sideways. It's like a small those particular trolleys that we normally see in hospitals or in airports, where you place it, your mizigo, then you can be able to move it up and down or one particular point to another. So that particular trolley is also designed in a particular manner so that you can be able to to fix your camera there. Then it can enable you now to work with that particular the way you'd want. But what this particular trolley requires is it requires an environment that is very flat. If your environment is not that flat, then be assured that at the end of the day, it will have a lot of shakes. Better you would have used actually your hands. Don't forget too that your hands are also what a support equipment that you need to be able to make use of when editing. So up to that particular point, I would want to believe that we have shared something. And before I move on to the next thing that I want us to be able to do, let me get to know if there's a question. last, I can be able to see Esther Kiningi, John Mtinda, Kelvin Torolei, Vincent Moniki, and Wajiku. Nalo swali? Kevin? Kevin? John? Umefuatilia vile tumesema? Esther, tena umeenda? Kevin? Kevin? Hello? Waithaka? Waithaka?
Yes, yes.
Ujambo?
Sijambo.
Umeamka?
Siko nimelala.
Umefuatilia vile tumesema toka mwanzo?
Naam. Naam.
Oho. Unalo swali?
La.
Ulizeni. Uliza swali. Umetaka tena umeenda?
Nimesema sina swali.
Oh, umesema huna swali.
Naam.
Sawa sawa, lakini umeyafuatilia yote vile tumesema.
Naam.
Now, I would want to request you so that you can be able to go back to the Moodle. And on the Moodle, you will be able to see the notes that I've actually posted there. You'll also be able to see a video that I've actually uploaded there. And I would want you to be very keen in terms of listening and watching this particular video. That particular video will be able to show you exactly the things that we need to be able to work on. From picking the camera to the various parts of the camera, from the various operations of that particular camera, you'll be able to see a lot of things that you need to be able to work on. And I would want to believe that by the end of this lesson and that particular video, you will be at a position to operate a camera like a pro. And the next things that you're going to look into, then it will be much easier, so that I can be able now to assign you to various assignments, and you'll be able to do them with a lot of ease. So I'm seeing Kevin saying he has no question. Up to that particular point, let me sign off and say enjoy your remaining part of the day, and stay focused. Use that particular phone that you have as your camera, and always try to do the best that you can be able to do, so that at the end of the day, you'll be able to know how do you become a better photographer and photojournalist, because that's the best that you can be able to do. All the best. Enjoy the rest of the day.